So, hello and welcome to another episode of Connection Alchemy. My name's Emma Buggy and I'm here with my dear friend Andy Hicks.
Hello.
And today we are going to bring you an episode together that is yet again supporting you to translate your relationship garbage into relationship gold. So, Andy, what are we going to talk about today?
Today we're going to talk about, if you have an argument with your partner, how not to freak out if you want to reconnect and have reassurance, but your partner just wants space and kind of wants to get away from you. And if you're the person that wants space, how do you communicate that to your partner in a way that shows that you care about them?
I have a sigh and out breath there because I can imagine that if I had heard an episode like this a few years ago, maybe like 7 or 8 years ago, it may have saved my past relationships, because I can really remember how much I yearned for that kind of communication, both that self-responsibility of knowing what it is that I need when I'm feeling anxious and alone and I want to connect with my partner, and also that care in the communication from my partner when he needed space. And instead, what I was left with was this confusing feeling of shame, embarrassment, aloneness, anger, frustration, and just not knowing how to be with my own anxiety or to ask for the kind of communication that I need from my partner. So I'm excited that we're talking about this today. I imagine it also touches you personally, Andy.
It does, but I want to just sort of reflect that it sounds like you're suggesting that not getting this right, not knowing how to deal with this well, can actually mean that your relationships completely break down.
It can do. It can be one of the core sort of places that we go into conflict with each other, and it can be a real source for many relationships where there's discomfort. I work with couples all the time, and this area of relating comes up so often. And it's very often that kind of need for space and alone time versus the need for reassurance and knowing that you matter and connection. It's like one of the most common places where couples can get in a rut.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and it's definitely a rut that I have fallen into many times. I tend to be the person who wants the reassurance in the relationship. If we have an argument, to me it feels like we have this kind of nice, warm, cozy, affectionate connection, and then there's the conflict, the argument feels like a disconnection, and then it brings up a lot of fear in me, like, oh my goodness, is it going to feel like this forever? We're never going to have that nice, warm, cozy feeling again. Do you actually not even like me anymore? Do you not love me? Is it kind of over between this? There's a lot of fear comes in, and a sort of impatience to try to reconnect as quickly as possible to get rid of that feeling of fear. And what I have often done in terms of my behaviour when I'm feeling that uncomfortable is try to cuddle my partner or tell them I love them or stroke their face and try to get a reaction of reassurance back. And if they are someone who wants space in that moment, I don't get that.
Yeah.
And then it's just even more scary.
Yeah.
Because they're sort of reinforcing my fear that this is it. This is going to feel this horrible and disconnected forever. And this part of me that's desperate to be soothed and reassured isn't getting what it wants and doesn't really know what to do.
So what I'm hearing in you is that particularly when it comes up in conflict, in moments of conflict between you and a partner, like what your nervous system wants, that younger part of you that is fearful wants in order to co-regulate is that reassurance, that knowing that you're together, that sort of touch, that comforting. And it can be really scary when you don't get that.
Yeah. I think it's something like what I want to hear is right now, what I need is just some space, but in half an hour I'll come and give you a cuddle. Like something like that would be like, oh, thank God. Okay, it's only going to be half an hour. But maybe she can't say that. Maybe she doesn't know it's going to be half an hour. But it's wanting to know that it's going to end. I think is part of it for me.
that you have that communication around what the other person needs in that moment, and at the same time it's giving you like some kind of predictability, something that you can kind of hook onto for the future, that supports you to relax in the present moment, because you know that she's not leaving forever by going off to have her space right now. She's leaving for whatever time she needs, and then she's coming back into connection with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I want to take a breath, because I just notice in myself so many things stirring in me in relationship to this. If you're new to this podcast, or if you've been following us for a while, I'd love to ask you to hit the follow button and share it with people that you know in your network. The reason for that is that it really supports us to get this message out to more people, and that makes it more enjoyable for us to make the podcast episodes, because we know that more people are hearing it, and it makes it more sustainable because it reaches a wider audience.
Yeah, definitely. We also would like it if you came along to our event.
Yeah.
16th and 17th of March, Connecting Mindfully. We're going to be covering a lot of the kinds of things that we talk about in these podcasts. So part of it is a focus on mindfulness and mindful self-compassion, how to deal with feelings of anger, shame, sadness, anxiety in a more compassionate way. And the other big component is NVC, so learning the principles, the basics of nonviolent communication as a way to deepen your relationships with other people, to navigate conflict more skillfully, to ask for what you want.
And to learn the skill of active listening.
Active listening.
Yeah.
Why is that important, Emma?
It's important because we very often listen to each other in a defensive way, or in order to respond with our own...
No, I don't.
Exactly, like he did, in order to respond with our stories, with our advice, with our solutions, and that can very often get in the way of us really slowing down and hearing the deeper, more vulnerable, beautiful message that our partners or friends are trying to convey to us. And learning that skill is a game changer when it comes to conflict, because rather than hearing the judgments that they have about us, we can hear what they're actually trying to say.
Yeah. And we ran one a couple of weeks ago now.
Yeah.
And it was a smash hit.
It was. Yeah. We loved it. It went really well. I got a lot of positive feedback. And it's based on courses that we've been running for quite some years now. So we'd love if you can come along, hit the follow button, and have a look at the events page. If you have any questions, send us a message. Yeah, I notice as I hear you speak, there's like the part of me that really, really recognizes what you're talking about in myself. It's like you're speaking my own my own experience. So I think we're similar. If for those people who know about attachment styles, anxious attachment is mostly the people who are feeling anxious about the relationship. They're afraid that the other person is going to leave, or that the other person doesn't like them, and so they're more likely to lean into the relationship and ask for reassurance all of the time. That's some of the attributes of anxious attachment. There's a lot more to it, and I really recommend that you go and read about it if you want to understand more. And so I think both of us lean a bit more into the anxious attachment style, right?
Yeah.
At the same time, I do notice, because your attachment style can change depending on the relationship that you're in and the relationship that you have with yourself. And I also know that in some friendships, I've definitely recognized myself being on the other side of the coin, where someone else is leaning in towards me and wanting reassurance, or wanting to understand what's happening, or wanting to connect, and I kind of want space, and I want to lean away, and I just don't want to answer, or I just like ugh, and I have this kind of response of frustration towards them. And that we could label as an attribute that's a bit more synonymous with the avoidant attachment style. And before we go into this, I just want to say that labeling ourselves as anxious or avoidant or disorganized or anything else, it can be both really empowering, because for me, in labeling myself as leaning towards anxious, I understand more of my behaviors, where they come from, why it's there, why I act out in a certain way, what it is that I actually need. And there's more compassion and understanding. And that allows me to make different choices in my behavior. But on the other hand, the kind of minus side to it is that if I get really attached to labeling me or another person, I can lose the nuances of communication. I can lose my humanity, their humanity. I can get stuck in the analysis paralysis, and that's really disconnecting. That can be really disconnecting. So as we talk about this today, I really want to invite people to kind of just be with the needs and the humanity that's behind our responses. And if the labels support you, great. And if they don't, just chuck them in the bin.
Hold them lightly.
Hold them lightly, yeah. And then there's one more thing that came up for me, and then I feel like we can take a breath and dive in. And that is that what we're going to talk about is not just for conflict. I find this comes up in very mundane situations. This need for space versus need for reassurance, or this wish for connection versus wish for time alone. It comes up in friendship all the time. It comes up in very mundane situations when I'm sitting around the dinner table with my flatmates, or sitting at the family dinner table, or hanging out with a group of friends. So
one person wants you to come out and socialise, and you're like, actually, I need a rest. I need to chill.
Yeah. So I think it's important to say that we can use this model of communicating with ourselves and the other, both in deep conflict and also just for the in-between moments when it feels a bit uncomfortable, how to communicate what you need.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Many situations it can come up. So I thought maybe it'd be good to give an example, so we could take it from the sort of theoretical and the general to like a specific way that this is played out in my life. It might make it a bit more vivid for people. So I remember with an ex, I don't remember what had happened to get us into this mood, but we were walking back to our flat in a really bad mood. Particularly, I felt like in my mind she was in a bad mood, and I was worried about her bad mood. But maybe we both were feeling like that. And there was a sense of like, I'm worried about it. I feel disconnected from her. And I'm really desperate for us to reconnect somehow, but I have no idea how in this moment that we're walking back. And when we get home, she goes straight into the bedroom, and it's like, it's early evening, it's not bedtime, but she goes straight into the bedroom and gets into bed. And I have this really strong urge to get in there, give her a cuddle, and say, "Is everything okay? And are we okay? And are you upset with me? And have I done something?" Like wanting reassurance for what I might have done to upset her, wanting to know if she's having resentful thoughts towards me or angry thoughts, feeling rejected in that moment, and understanding a little bit of what we've just been talking about, and making this decision. Right, I can see what I'm doing here. I'm desperately trying to get her to reassure me, and she doesn't want to give me that in this moment.
And can I just check? It's like I'm desperately trying to get her to reassure me by me checking in on her.
Yeah. By me coming up and it seeming like I'm being there for her, it's actually me asking for something.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's very true. So I made this decision, okay, instead of doing that, instead of trying to go into the bedroom, I'm going to go into a different room, and I'm going to sit and I'm going to meditate, because what I'm recognizing is that I'm trying to get rid of uncomfortable feelings by getting her to do something, by getting her to give me reassurance. So I sat there for about an hour, and I just let myself feel whatever I was feeling, and I realized it wasn't that bad. I could do it. I wasn't freaking out. I wasn't panicking. And it felt incredibly empowering to just think, I'm going to sit here and feel what I'm feeling and trust that she will want to reconnect at some point. At a certain point, I said, "Do you want dinner?" We ate dinner together, didn't say very much. She went back into the bedroom. We didn't really speak the whole evening. And then she woke up in the morning and it was fine again. We reconnected. And it was like a light bulb moment of like, this is what I need to do in those moments. Just be okay with being with myself and not need her to give me something in those moments. Allow her space, connect to how I'm feeling, and reassure and soothe myself. And then we're both getting what we need.
So it's kind of seems like a very simple thing to do in a way, to really just spend time in the emotions, allow yourself to feel what you're feeling, and trust that the connection will come back again. And I'm hearing how for you, after you spent that hour, like you thought maybe before that it was going to be a lot more difficult than it actually was, but at the end of the hour you were like, oh, I can do this. And I can be with those difficult emotions, and actually something transforms when I do that. And I wonder if it, like by doing that, it built trust into your relationship, that you weren't expecting her to always be responsible for your feelings of anxiety.
I would say the word that comes up initially isn't trust. It's something around more like acceptance. That she felt more like it was okay for her to have the feelings that she felt.
Yeah.
I wasn't making it into a problem.
Yeah.
I could accept, okay, she's in a bad mood, she's upset, she's sad, she needs space. That's okay. I accept that's what she needs and that's how she feels. Whereas before she said it was like you couldn't deal with it. It wasn't okay for me to be like that, and that didn't feel good to me.
Yeah. So before she experienced your need for reassurance and your wish for her to reassure you as a kind of pushing away of how she is in this moment, that she needs to be different, that she needs to change. Whereas when you were able to take yourself off and care for yourself, that gave her this experience of being accepted and that she can take her space and it's okay.
Exactly. And to me that also felt like a kind of maturity. I don't know if it was my inner child, maybe my inner child that was freaking out, and my adult self was able to be like, to give the reassurance that I was initially asking from her.
So I want to take another breath here, just being with this one possible way out of many that you can approach a situation where you might be feeling anxious and needing reassurance and wanting your partner to tell you that everything is okay, and worrying that they're angry with you or that you've done something wrong, and taking yourself off and giving yourself the space and time to be with those emotions. Perhaps for those who are listening and haven't got the meditation experience that you do, Andy, is there like a journal prompt that you would give people that they could write in response to this, for example? So say they haven't tried this hour of feeling their emotions. Is there a way that they could go into another room and answer some questions through journaling, or even if they choose to do it through meditation, that they can sit with? Do you have anything like that? And then just for those of you who might be already sitting at the edge of your seats going, yes, but that's not fair because then my partner's not taking any responsibility. We're going to come to that. We're coming to that next. Don't worry. I'm holding in me a lot of care because that part of me is activated now. That's like, I also want my partner to hold responsibility for their part in this. And we're going to come to that in a second. So, do you have any...
Well, actually, I'd like to turn it around to you, Emma.
Oh, yeah. Turn it round to me, Andy. Go on.
What, as someone who's had the same reactions in their relationships, how have you learnt to deal with it? Have you used meditation, journaling?
Yeah. So, yes. I have really come across this so many times. That story feels so familiar to me. It's been played on repeat so many times, particularly in my last relationship, which was the longest relationship I've had of 8 years. And what I found supported me was basically learning. Like I got to learn and become familiar with the part of me, this younger part of me that was experiencing that anxiety. And so this is maybe it's not such an easy response, because in my experience it required a lot of inner work. I did a lot of looking at the inner child, the younger Emma that had this experience in childhood of not being enough, of being looked at with disgust by a carer when she expressed her feelings and needs or said no to something, and so was really anxious about wanting to be seen for her beauty. And so I understood much more the context of my reaction, and in doing that I developed a process where I will sit with that part of me that's internally like stressing out and looking at me with tears in her eyes and saying, the other person doesn't understand me, they don't see me, they misunderstood, they see me as bad and wrong, and that's not what I meant, and I meant a good thing, and I just want to be seen for my good intentions. And I sit with her as I would like to sit with a child as a parent, and just give her all of that space and attention and recognition. And I say, I see you, sweetheart, and yeah, you just wanted them to see your beautiful intentions, and you didn't mean it, and you want to be accepted and loved and reassured and celebrated, and that's what supports me to move through that, is meeting the part that's anxious. And I developed that process over years. So unfortunately, my response is, I wish I could give a quick fix in this moment, but my version would be to connect with my inner child and to learn how to do that.
Yeah. And was that something you did with a therapist or different ways over time?
Yes, so there were a few courses that I attended that were based on nonviolent communication and neuroscience. There's a particular practitioner called Sarah Payton, whose work I really, really recommend. But I did like an 8-week training in that, and that helped me to understand how my neuroceptors network is creating all of this, and the kind of language that I needed to hear and receive in order to regulate my nervous system. But also there is one exercise that I think is very powerful, actually, and that we could offer, which is to write a letter to the part of myself that is feeling anxious and freaking out. And I start it like this. I say, "Dear anxious little Emma," or whichever words I want to use to kind of show that I care for her. "I notice that you're feeling afraid or sad or upset right now, and I really want to connect with you. I want to know what's going on for you. I'm here to listen, and I'm not going to turn away. What do you want me to understand?" And that would be on like the top of the paper, and I would do a little wiggly line, and then I connect with the anxious part, and the anxious part responds and goes, "I'm freaking out, they don't love me, they think this, they do that, la 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 la." She expresses all of her fears and her worries and her anxiety, and then when that layer feels like it's complete, wiggly line underneath, and then that part of me that feels present responds and goes, "Yeah, I can really hear how afraid you are." She doesn't give advice. She doesn't say, "You'll be all right, mate. Chin up." She doesn't do that. She doesn't kind of try and get her to think of something else. She just reflects back like, "I hear that you're afraid. I hear that you're anxious. You want to be loved. You want to experience connection." And that letter continues until it feels complete.
Beautiful. So it's a very simple, powerful way to listen to your inner child's fears, give them space, and sort of reparent her a bit. Have your older, the adult Emma, be present and supportive to what she's saying, feeling and needing.
Yeah. I think that's something that people could explore or experiment with already now. If you have a situation, even from the past, that you want to use as an example, you can sit yourself down and have a kind of conversation between these two parts. Yeah, and it can be supportive to use the feelings and needs list, which I will link in the podcast notes, because that list can support me to recognize, well, what am I actually feeling, and what is the underlying need that this is pointing towards. Would you add anything to that, Andy?
A couple of things come to mind. One is that maybe it's easier from the outsider perspective to feel that sense of compassion and softness towards the inner child. Like when you were talking about the little Emma that feels scared and thinks she's done something wrong, I felt all of this love and wanting, just the softness and tenderness. And I think when it's my inner child, either I don't necessarily realise that's what it is, or I get frustrated with myself. Like it's harder to maybe for me to do it for myself than to see it in someone else. So that would be one thing. And the other thing is, noticing that there is a desire in the format of a podcast or a blog to be like, so this is the quick fix to change your life and improve your relationships and become rich and be happy forever.
Just listen to us and all of your problems will be solved. Ta-da!
Only for 99.99.
Yeah.
That we are pointing towards things that can take many, many years to really deeply resolve.
Yeah, or rather than the word resolve, I would say transform.
Yeah. To transform, to really understand deeply what's going on, to have a different relationship with.
Yeah.
So I wanted to maybe reconnect with what our intention actually is for the people listening when they hear us talking about this. It's really nice to hear you saying how much you resonate with my experiences of this anxious attachment style, and I hope that might be something that some people would get from it, of having this empathy of like, oh right, it's not just me.
Yes,
they're talking about something that I experienced myself, or that I've been in relationships with people that experience and maybe didn't really make sense or felt frustrating.
So that it can bring a bit more clarity and understanding and compassion towards the experience of you or your loved one that might be going through what you and I have gone through many, many times.
many times. And maybe to give some hope as well, that there are ways of navigating them, that you don't necessarily get 3 steps to solving instantly in a podcast, but over time you can, through meditation, through therapy, through journaling, through different ways, shift these patterns.
By turning towards yourself. And that, I think that's something that I love about my anxiety, or that anxious part of me, is that it keeps bringing me inwards towards understanding myself more and more. So in a way, it's also a gift, because it's so uncomfortable to be with. There's a part of me that goes, I really want to understand what this is all about. I want to change. I want to know that there are different ways. And that kind of wish for growth and change that comes as a result of the discomfort of that anxiety has deepened my connection to life, not just to myself, my relationships, my friendships, but it's brought me so much more in connection with the beauty of being alive. So I kind of want to almost say, for those that are listening that might be going, feeling anxiety around the anxiety, that actually it can be such an enriching thing to go on a process of inner work. And I imagine many people listening are already doing that and recognizing both the discomfort and the benefit of deep self-connection and connection with others.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so seeing the anxiety that maybe for a long time it seems like something you just want to get rid of, and it's a problem, and I shouldn't be feeling like this, as a gift that can actually take you on a journey, help you connect with yourself, help you connect more deeply with other people, bring more of a sense of aliveness to your life. Yeah.
Yes, aliveness and depth. Yeah.
Deeper connection with yourself and other people.
Yeah, and a wider perspective.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and
I'm wondering if this is a good moment to shift the perspective round to the person who's like, back off.
Well, before we do that, I just wanted to check in case, because I know that my dear friend Andy here is a mindfulness practitioner, mindfulness coach, and so I'm wondering if, using your skills from your knowledge of mindfulness, if there is actually something simple, doable, that people can do even without having done these years of work and blah, 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 that they can just apply that shorter practice that will support them in some way to be with the anxiety in a moment of conflict or in a moment when they need reassurance and they're not able to receive it.
Yes, well, what I would point people to is what we were talking about in our podcast episode on the inner critic.
Yes.
Where we did a self-compassion meditation. And I think that is the kind of meditation that is most powerful in those moments.
Yeah.
Where you can take a moment to notice the fact that you're suffering, that you're feeling pain, to connect with the fact that you're not alone in this, and to give yourself self-soothing through gestures and words. So we can connect to that episode. We can also connect to a meditation that people can do that I've recorded.
Brilliant.
Of mindful self-compassion, that you could actually think to yourself, right, it's happening now. I'm having this anxious feeling and this need to reconnect with my partner who doesn't want to connect. It's time to do that self-compassion meditation.
Brilliant. So we've got 2 resources. We've got the video that they can just play and use in the moment that you lead them through, and they can listen to the last podcast episode.
It's actually an audio on Insight Timer.
Okay, brilliant. Okay. So again, one last thing before we move to the person that needs space, because I really want to kind of feel a bit more, there's a part of me that's holding on to that wish for self-awareness as the person who's anxious. There's also something that I can do if I want to experience reassurance from the person that I'm connecting with. So the one option is to go off and give myself reassurance, and I worry that if I only do that, and if I make that the better option or the rule, then I start to judge the part of me that does want to experience reassurance. Yeah. And that supports me to feel safe. That is a valid and beautiful and sweet part of yourself that I so want us to reclaim and be okay with, and be empowered to ask for reassurance in a way that doesn't make the other person responsible for us to have that need met. And that's the difference, where if I make the other person responsible, so if I think of a moment with my ex-partner where it's like, if you don't give me a hug now, or if you don't at least tell me that you love me, or la 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 now, then I cannot be okay in this moment, and I'm going to go off and freak out in the other room, and I'm going to hate you for it, and I'm going to be lost in this anxious loop.
And it'll be your fault.
It's just so it just entrenches that kind of dance where I need you to come closer, and by me like forcing you to come closer, I push you further away. And you need space from me, and the further the space you take, the more I want to come closer. And we call this the anxious avoidant dance. So again, that's something you can look into if you're interested in. So when I am in that space, something that's been really powerful for me was I used to really judge my need for reassurance. I used to go, ugh, it's so icky, it's so needy, you shouldn't need that, and therefore I will never ask for it, which only made that need in myself larger, more present, more painful, more untangible. And the moment that I recognized that it was a beautiful and sweet and tender need of mine that I wanted to love and nourish and care for, I started to ask for this in my relationships. And I remember a time with my ex-partner where I actually said to him something along the lines of, I noticed that in this moment I'm feeling really anxious and afraid. I'm telling myself a story, so I'm owning that it's a story in my head, that you're upset with me or that you don't like me, and that's okay if that's true. And at the same time, it would really support me to know that you are still wanting to stay in connection at some point. Are you willing to tell me if you're open to that, if you're open to coming back into connection at some point, or letting me know when you're going to come back from your time away, or letting me know that you do still love me even though you're angry with me. And it was so sweet, because in that moment he was like, my darling, of course I still love you. I'm only angry with you because I love you so much. It's just like, I'm only pissed off because there's so much love here. And it's like, I'm pissed off with you. And yes, I'm annoyed, but I love you. And I'm going to take my space, and then we'll come back. And that, me asking for that, and even in other vulnerable moments, like when I broke up with this partner and they were with another person, I again shared, like, I noticed that I feel really sad and insecure, imagining the story is that I'm being replaced, that you found someone better, that you found someone who is better than I am. And again, it's really important that I own that as my story. Yeah. If I say it as like, you found someone better, you're replacing me, and that's the truth, then I'm making him responsible for the anxious story that I'm holding. Whereas if I can say, I know this is a story of mine, it touches my pain, and I just want to know from you that the parts of our relationship that were meaningful for you, are you still connected to them? Do you still value me as a friend, as a person in your life? And it was beautiful because again, in our connection, it really did feel, and it still does feel, like the friendship and the love, it was so important. And I just received the most beautiful, real, genuine reassurance in that moment. So I feel like that's an important thing to say, that can I ask? And where it gets tricky is, what if the person doesn't give me the reassurance that I want? Because I don't want it to be ingenuine. I don't want them to tell me something that's not true. Oh yeah, I do really still love you, when internally they don't. So when I ask for that, I need to also hold that part of me that's able to reassure myself, which is what we've already spoken about. So that, I feel a bit complete in myself around that bit, and I'd love to pass that over to you and see if there's anything else you would add to it, or if it resonates for you as something that you would find supportive in moments when you need reassurance.
I find it very touching hearing you tell the story of how you've managed to learn to do that, and learn to ask for it in a way that's not angry, judgy, blamey, that then, because you're doing it in such a loving way, and a way that's really taking ownership of your judgments, your story, your feelings, that it naturally brought out this very loving response, even in that moment when they're angry with you. That, yes, because I'm angry, that's why I love you, because that's why I'm angry. I found that very touching, and I don't think I have found the language to do that in my own relationships in the past, and I feel inspired to learn to do that more. And I particularly as well feel inspired hearing you ask for the reassurance around, am I being replaced, and do you still have good memories of our time together? Because I can imagine it could be so easy in those situations to just think, well, I'm just going to completely cut you off, I don't want to hear from you at all, or I'm just going to be angry at you and tell you that you're being insensitive because you've done this and done that. How beautiful to be able to ask for the reassurance that you want, and to be able to receive it. And in that moment, I think it sounds like an incredibly skillful way to ask for what you want in those moments. It's beautiful to hear.
I just want to say I feel really touched hearing your response, Andy. It soothes a part of me that maybe still, like a slightly anxious part of me that's here right now, that kind of goes, is it still too much to do that? Am I too anxious? Is that really taking self-responsibility? Will the people listening, or will Andy think, yeah, you're just finding a wordy way around it to make the other person responsible for you? So hearing that you feel inspired by it, and that actually it touches something in you and it soothes you, that reassures that part of me that's like, I guess, wanting to be seen for how much she really cares for the connection, and wants to be self-responsible, and wants to care for what she needs, and is just trying out this language of life, inspired by a lot of work with nonviolent communication, and still very much learning how to do it, even 9-10 years into the journey. So thank you, Andy.
You're welcome. I am wondering what happens if they do say no.
If they say no! What if they say no?
Actually, my new girlfriend is better than you.
Yeah,
We're much
is.
happier. She's more beautiful.
Yeah.
She's more fun.
Yeah.
We don't have the same arguments. It's an upgrade.
Yeah, and how painful that would be to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or like, I can't reassure you in this moment. Bugger off. I don't love you right now.
Yeah.
I don't want to speak to you.
I don't want to.
I don't know when I'm gonna, if I ever gonna want to speak to you again.
Yeah.
I'm so angry and upset.
Yeah. And just how painful a response like that could feel when I've taken the chance to be vulnerable with my tender need for reassurance and asking for it. And that's where I really, really, really need to check in with myself before I make a request like that. Am I truly willing to receive their no and honour that, even if it feels painful for me? Because if I'm not willing to receive it and I have an expectation of them to meet me in my need for reassurance in exactly the way that I would like to, then I'm demanding that from them.
Yeah.
And I'm not caring for their needs. I'm not including the other person's experience. I'm hyper focused on what I need in order to soothe my nervous system. I'm kind of deflecting the responsibility back onto them rather than saying, this feels fucking vulnerable and scary. I'm asking you and I don't expect it from you. And if you don't want to give that to me and cannot give that to me, I have other resources. I can go to my friends and ask for them to hear how painful that was. I can give compassion to myself. I can use the skills that I've learned on Emma and Andy's trainings, for example. If you come to one of our courses, then you might learn more deeply some of these skills that you can implement. That's an important part, I think. Am I willing to receive their no? Because if not, then chances are asking those questions, making those requests are going to be more painful for both of us.
That is huge, I think, being able to recognise that I'm not completely attached to them being the person that needs to give me the thing I want in that way.
Yeah.
I've got other options.
Yes.
Because I can imagine for a lot of people in that moment, it feels like there's no other option. I need this person to say these words, otherwise I can't be okay.
Now! And exactly how I want it.
Yeah. With the right tone of voice and the right emotion, and they really mean it.
And if you don't, then I'm just going to explode with anxiety and fear and aloneness, and that's a very vulnerable place to be in that demand energy. I really want to care for when I'm in demand energy, when I'm say the thing that I want you to say and do it now, because if not, it's I like to imagine a baby that's screaming for milk. My teacher, Yoram Musanzen, I think he used, I won't directly quote him, I just have a sense that it came from a class that I did with him, where he was saying it's like a baby that's screaming for milk and there's no mother to breastfeed. So it's then the child starts screaming and screaming and screaming and screaming. It's that's how I see myself when I'm in demand energy, or another person. And not to infantilize them and say, oh, you're like a baby screaming. It's more to see the vulnerability, that fear, that absolute helplessness and wish to be seen and understood and met, and not having the creativity, the peripheral vision to see that there are other ways for them to be fed.
Yeah.
They are completely fixated naturally on this only one solution, and that's what means I'm going to be suffering now in a way that feels like eternity.
And so for them, they do only have one option, and as an adult, it can feel like
you only have one option in that moment. But
the reality is, we always do have more options.
We have many options that we're just not yet aware of.
Yeah.
And getting creative around finding those options is something that I love to teach on my courses.
Yeah.
Because that's the art of great communication. It's being open to life in many, many different ways. When we get hyper focused on only one way, that's where we clash, and that's where arguments happen, and that's where the relationship disintegrates.
Yeah. So, I recognise that we've been talking for a while, and maybe this is a good point to have a pause.
Yeah.
And we could talk about how to care for the person who wants space. If you're the person who, how to care for the person who wants to get reassurance when you want space in the next episode.
In a next episode. Yeah, I think we can do that. Let's do that. I'm guessing people who are listening have probably gone, I was waiting for that part, but I kind of really want to honour the amount of time that it needs to have that conversation. And to, just as much as we've honoured the anxious person in this one, I really want to honour the person who needs space. I don't want to say the anxious person, it's labelling them. The person who's experiencing anxiety, we've really honoured them and their experience in this episode. And then the next one we will do will be honouring the person who is perhaps displaying avoidant tendencies, or, in other words, just needing space. Just needing space. Just need some space to be with all the overwhelm. Yeah, such a tender place to be in. Thank you, Andy, so much.
Thank you, Emma. Yeah, I feel like we've covered a lot of good ground.
Yeah.
A lot to take in probably for someone listening, but can always listen to it more than once.
Exactly. And of course, we will be adding all the links that we mentioned in the podcast notes. I will say at this part of the episode, if you have been listening to us, or even if you're new to us, please hit the follow button, because if you follow us, it means that the algorithm does some magic and makes it clearer to other people that we exist, which means that we can get more of these episodes out to people in the world. And that makes it more sustainable and enjoyable for us to make the episodes, because it's nice to know that more people are being reached.
Indeed.
So follow and share it on your Instagram or social media feeds with other people. And we have another Connecting Mindfully course starting on the 16th and 17th of March 2024. We did our last one a few weeks ago. It was awesome.
It was amazing.
And maybe we'll mention a bit more of that in the next episode.
Yeah, just to say briefly that we're going to be covering how to be more self-compassionate, so dealing with those uncomfortable feelings that might come up in the situations we've been talking about, shame, anxiety, stress, and learning deeper communication skills for navigating conflict, for asking for your needs to be met, the fundamentals of non-violent communication, which I think Emma teaches brilliantly. And the feedback we got at the end of the last one was phenomenal. People saying we want more. It was so great. There were brother sister pairing who felt like they'd got a deeper relationship. There were couples who felt like they got a deeper relationship by the end of the weekend.
Yeah.
So I was on a real high. I think we both were.
Yeah. And in the feedback forms, we got a lot of 9 out of 10s and 10s out of 10s, which really boosted my ego. So yes, please do take a look at that course if you're interested. It's in London, non-residential, but there's amazing spaces that you can stay in. If you need support with that, just get in contact with us, and keep an eye out for the next episode, where we will go into the other side of the coin. Thanks for listening.
See you next time.